You know, there's something to be said about the power of cult movies. There's something so endearing about a movie that gets hated upon initial release, but then, you know, over time people realize, man, this was a hidden treasure that we forgot about and dissed, and now it's time to cherish it. Wikipedia has a whole list of cult films, and some of my favorite movies are on there. This isn't one of those movies. Today, let's go over 13 reasons why 13 Ghosts suck. Not 13 Ghosts the original. I have nothing against that movie. It's an excellent movie. 13 Ghosts, the 2001 remake, starring Tony Shalhoub. It's about 1:30 a.m. right now. I've just listened to Shipwreck Glue by Kelpie. Gosh darn, that song slaps harder than it has any right to. Let's get right into 13 reasons why 13 Ghosts sucks. This is 13 Ghosts, and you've just crossed over into the Ghostiverse, baby. Yeah, okay, I know. It's November, and I'm still doing reviews of horror movies. What else is new? Welcome to the channel. I mostly review horror movies. Sometimes I review comedies. I don't know why. I review the movies that interest me. Not always a particular genre. You know, Halloween's over, but heck, I'll tie this into Thanksgiving somehow. Here's 13 reasons why you should be thankful that you haven't seen the 2001 remake of 13 Ghosts. Unless you have, in which case I am so sorry for you. In my VHS Crazy review of Gothica, which is another project from Dark Castle Entertainment, which takes its name from William Castle, one of the best horror directors of the 1950s. You know, I mentioned that Gothica was actually a lot better than I remembered, and it is a very cheesy 2000s horror movie, and it like all Dark Castle productions, it has that kind of undeniable 2000s-ishness to it, but at least it's an original story. So it has the ability to be entertaining and thought-provoking, you know, because it's not just a rehash of a movie from the 50s that nobody asked for a remake of, because it's from the flippin' 50s, you know. I mean, nobody was like, yeah, 13 Ghosts, we want a new one of this. But somehow Dark Castle Entertainment thought that they could really bank off all these old William Castle properties like 13 Ghosts and House on Haunted Hill and House of Wax. And those of you who don't know who William Castle is, an absolute legend. I mean, all his movies have a really fun gimmick. Everyone knows him for that. And they're not that great movies. Like, they're not scary. Like, you're not going to watch a William Castle movie and be, like, scared out of your head. But they're fun because, you know, you just think, man, you know, back in the day, movies were considered a respectable institution, and not only would William Castle supply movie theaters nationwide with, you know, these fun movies that he put together, but also it's really fun props and stuff that audience members would get to keep. I mean, that's just really cool. One of his movies, you know, you get a life insurance policy, and like if you die of fright or you have a heart attack during the movie, then, you know, they'll wheel you out on a stretcher or whatever. And, you know, one of the movies, it's like they put like electric things in the seats, so like when it was supposed to be scary, then you could like, you know, it would like electrocute you. And you got Mr. Sardonicus, you know, classic. You got the punishment poll where the audience votes for whether they want the ending where Mr. Sardonicus gets punished or not. You know, really fun stuff, right? With 13 Ghosts, the gimmick was that you had these 3D glasses, and if you wore them, then you'd see the ghosts, and if you didn't, then you wouldn't see the ghosts. Really cool gimmick. And it was a pioneering effect at the time. In fact, I don't think there were 3D glasses. I think there were a special type of glasses that were made just for the movie. So you could see the ghosts with them on or not see the ghosts with them off. That's really really awesome, especially for like the 50s. I mean, we're talking pioneering optical technology here. So 13 Ghosts, the original, is not an excellent horror movie by any means. It's very cheesy. The plot is just, 13 ghosts. It's 13 ghosts in a spooky mansion. What could be more fun? And unlike House on Haunted Hill, which benefits from the presence of, Vincent Price, 13 Ghosts doesn't have that. And then later in his career, oddly enough, Castle produced Rosemary's Baby, which is just a bizarre turn of events, because, I mean, that's one of the most, art house horror pictures of all time, right? I mean, it's nothing like his earlier movies, which are just this exploitative schlock. But, I'm not going to pick on, 13 Ghosts or anything, because for the 50s, I mean, these were groundbreaking movies. They had, decapitations and stuff. And that's just so awesome. And I'm sure these movies really challenged, all the uptight fundamentalists of the age, and, just gave the public some good scares, which I think, maybe back then this stuff was considered scary. I really don't think so. I think, everyone knew they were cheap, B-movie type fare, but they're fun nonetheless, and I think the original 13 Ghosts really holds up, in part due to its really simple plot. It's a very by-the-numbers plot. His nephew's, he gets a mansion in a will, and his uncle's like, come on up to the mansion, but the mansion's haunted, and there's 12 ghosts inside, and someone's gonna become the 13th ghost because they're gonna die. Pretty spooky. Pretty simple premise, very basic. Oh no, my mysterious uncle, my mysterious benefactor has left me a haunted mansion. Very basic. Then we got the 2001 remake, directed by Steve Beck, who I looked on his Wikipedia page, and the only other movie he's ever directed is just Ghost Ship, also for Dark Castle Entertainment, and then he's never directed anything before or since. Also, he's done some commercials for McDonald's and Gatorade, and the only movie he's done effects for, it gives 3 movies, but I know Indiana Jones 3 is in there. So, but this is a movie he directed, so you got a guy whose entire catalog is just visual effects, becoming a director, which is a recipe for disaster, because all he knows is visual effects. He's not a director. He's just the industrial light magic guy. So, putting this guy in the director's chair is obviously going to end in disaster, because, this is stupid. As expected, 13 Ghosts, the remake, is a massive pile of just nonsense that gets worse the more I think about it. Here's 13 Reasons Why. Not the Netflix show, 13 Reasons Why 13 Ghosts absolutely flipping sucks. Number 1. The remake tries to update everything. This is a very basic complaint. It happens in a lot of remakes, not all of them. Some remakes really respect their subject material and try to, update a few things. We're not changing too much. Those are the remakes I enjoy. This is not one of those. They change literally everything and try and make it as high-tech and up to the minute as possible, and in doing so, this movie feels dated and stuck forever in 2001. For instance, when the lawyer comes to read the uncle's will, and the nephew is Tony Shalhoub, by the way, we'll get into that later. When the lawyer comes to read the will, the uncle's will is in MP4 file on a computer, and he's recorded this video message. Except, why not just have the will be paper? Because that's how wills work. I get that wills can be, a video, but they also come with a paper document, for for the beneficiary to sign. So why isn't there just a paper document? Why is it gotta be all high-tech? And the uncle's like, yes, I'm bestowing upon you my spooky mansion. Another way that the remake updates something that did not need to be updated. The mansion in this movie looks horrible. It does not look like a haunted house. It looks like a freaking, like, I don't know, pervert hotel or something. All the walls are transparent. It's like some steampunk abomination that, you know, obviously this guy whose entire expertise is visual effects and not directing thought, man, this looks really cool, without thinking, like, would anybody ever live in this house? Like, even this eccentric uncle guy? Like, this house is a piece of shit and does not make any sense. The movie could just be set in a spooky old mansion, you know? I remember the remake of The Haunting with Owen Wilson, and in that, or, you know, the remake of The Haunting of Hill House, and in that, the house that they go to is just a spooky old mansion. They don't update it with all these sliding mirrors and shit. Actually, I think in the remake of The Haunting there are some mirrors, but the point is that it's not a gosh darn fun house, it's just a haunted house, you know. And there could be like trapdoors and stuff, don't get me wrong. But when everything's a trapdoor, it becomes overkill and nothing's mysterious because everything's transparent. Like, think about this for a minute. When you're in a haunted house, what's scary comes from wondering what's beyond the door or in the room or what's hiding behind the corner. But if everything's see-through, that's ruined because, you know, you can see what's behind the corner. Anyway, so the remake updates that. Also, the remake is just firmly set in 2001. It's one of the most 2001 movies you'll ever see, much like how Gothica is forever stuck in the early 2000s. This movie is also stuck in the early 2000s. This is not the case for every 2000s movie, but I'm willing to wager that every Dark Castle entertainment property is a 2000s horror movie. So if that's what you're into, if you're into flipping All-American Rejects and gosh, what else was going on back then? It's a very 2000s horror movie, and it really tries to update everything and say, oh, this ain't your dad's 13 Ghosts, this ain't your grandpa's 13 Ghosts, man. This is the new 13 Ghosts. It's high-tech now. You got computers and shit. They got monitors and screens and laptops, baby. And it's like, nobody needs this shit. It's a movie about ghosts. Shut up and do your job. Reason number 2 is Tony Shalhoub. Tony Shalhoub is one of those unbearable 2000s personalities who you just wonder, how is he ever this big? Like, for years, he plays this quirky detective who's like, oh, I can't touch things because I'm a germaphobe. Oh no, I touched a wad of feces. I gotta go wash my hands now. It's like, Columbo's already plenty of a quirky detective enough for me, thank you very much. I don't need flipping Adrian Monk. Like, Adrian Monk is just such a broken character. Such a horrible premise for a show. So flipping random. And to think that, like, for years, you actually thought, like, Tony Shalhoub was a talented guy. Like, it's bizarre. The 2000s were flipping weird. Anyway, he's in this, and he plays the main character, the nephew of the wacky, eccentric uncle. You know, he's supposed to be given this character arc where his wife dies, and he's left with his kids, and he's insecure, and he's, you know, still trying to overcome the loss of his wife. And his wife dying is revealed to us in an opening montage, which is concerned only with visual effects, you know, because it's directed by just a visual effects nerd, where like the camera pans around the room, and at first it's all happy, and Tony Shalhoub is smiling like, oh, life is good. And then the camera goes back around the room, and suddenly it's sad, and you hear Tony Shalhoub's wife dying in the fire, and he's like, oh, my wife is dead. Can't show this. Gotta give it to us in a big opening credits exposition dump. Anyway, Tony Shalhoub is just a really, really bad actor. He's given nothing to do in this. And he's the engineer in Galaxy Quest. I've made this point before, but much like with the Orville, everyone says Galaxy Quest is good. You mean to tell me Tony Shalhoub is a better Star Trek engineer than all the actual Star Trek engineers? What's wrong with you? But also, no, Tony Shalhoub isn't funny. He never was. And he definitely isn't good in this, because he's not even trying to be funny in this. He's trying to be, you know, a serious character whose wife is dead. And the whole time all you can think is, oh shit, it's Adrian Monk, and he's about to solve the mystery of the loony bananas. Oh dang, I can't touch this doorknob because I'm a germaphobe. Ooh. It's like, what an awful lead. Like, out of everyone they could have gone with, they got Tony flipping Shalhoub. What the heck? Reason number 3, the reincorporation of the goggle theme. You might think, this sounds really cool, because the original 13 Ghosts has these awesome 3D glasses that when you put them on, the ghosts appear, right? That's really awesome. This movie doesn't have that. This movie is just, the characters in the movie have glasses that when they put them on, they can see the ghosts, and hence, the audience can also see the ghosts. And sometimes the audience can see the ghosts when the characters aren't even wearing the goggles, because, you know, why not? Such a missed opportunity. Like, why can't you just give the audience some goddamn goggles to look through? Like, if this effect could be accomplished in the flipping 50s, I think it could work now. And I think that would actually have maybe had this movie made a decent amount of money. I would have paid for it if they had the goggle gimmick, even if it was like a really shitty movie. If they had a fun ghost gimmick where you put on 3D goggles and you got to see the ghosts, and heck, they could have even kept in the part in the movie where the characters have goggles that help them see the ghosts. That's a fun little bit of lore building, a fun nod to the original, you know, a little reincorporation of the original, but give the audience some goddamn ghost goggles, am I right? I mean, who wants to watch a movie about ghosts that appear when you put goggles on, except only the characters use them? This is so stupid on so many levels, and for a studio calling itself Dark Castle Entertainment and trying to bank off the success of, you know, the legacy of this guy whose movies all had their own fun little gimmick that made the movie a fun experience. Like, if you're trying to market on the guy's name, just use the same thing, you know, because it's a remake. So just reissue the ghost goggles already. Hashtag, we deserve ghost goggles, please. But that doesn't happen, so the reincorporation of the goggles just makes no sense, and it makes me question, like, what's the point, you know? Why say, hey, there's goggles in this universe where if you put them on you can see the ghosts, if I can't do that, you know? And it's technologically possible. It was done in the flipping 50s, like, it's just pathetic. Number 4, the new ghosts all suck. So, to replace the fun gimmick of the ghost goggles, the gimmick instead is to make the new ghosts as contrived and complicated as possible. Unnecessarily complicated, to the point of being, like, confusing when you see them in the movie. The original 13 ghosts are flipping awesome. They're iconic. You got the fiery skeleton. You got the spooky hands. You got the spooky head. You know, just a fiery skeleton. Nobody knows, what his story is. He's just a fiery skeleton. He's just there to spook the guests, He's just there to put on a spooky time, spooky, scary skeletons, basic stuff. And the two most complex ghosts, or the five most complex ghosts, with the, backstory that's kind of explained, is the lion and the lion tamer. And the lion tamer, got his head bitten off in the lion's mouth. And the Italian chef and his wife and her, and the guy she's having an affair with. And, the Italian chef kills his wife and the guy she's having an affair with, and then presumably kills himself. But we don't see any of this. But, it's pretty simple to understand, basically. And the other ghosts are just fun, like, the wailing woman, or, fun. Just very basic ghosts that anyone can understand. And they easily could have just been brought back for this movie, but as point number one was, the remake feels the need to update everything. So in place of a fun goggle gimmick that would entice the audience and make them feel immersed in the story, the gimmick with this movie was to give every ghost this ridiculously contrived backstory and included as a feature on the DVD, because you have to remember, this is when DVDs are getting big and everyone's like, hey, we can put 100 gimmicks on the DVD, and not in the movie, but just on the DVD. So everyone who just watched this in theaters and didn't watch it on DVD or on VHS had no idea what was going on with these ghosts. The makeup is laughable. I mean, it looks like something from the flipping David S. Pumpkins ride. It looks so fake, the makeup is so bad, and it's not helped by the fact that all these ghosts are so hard to understand. Like, the backstories behind them are just too difficult for someone who doesn't have, the Wikipedia page at their disposal to get. Like, what's this ghost supposed to be? So one of the ghosts is a big black guy with all these like nails hammered into him, and that could just be simple. The nails look really fake, but it could just be simple. Oh, he's a guy with a bunch of nails in him. But since he's black, the film feels the need to put a race-oriented spin on the ghost and talk about racism in this movie about flipping ghosts in a haunted house. Like, what? Here's his backstory. A happy and honest family man and blacksmith, George Markley was falsely accused of stealing by a higher-up named Nathan and threatened with exile from their old western town. George refused to leave, and his family was lynched by Nathan and his band of thugs while walking home from the town market one day. Seeking justice in the corrupt town, George took his blacksmith's hammer and killed those responsible, but the townsfolk chained him to a tree and drove railroad spikes into his body. His left hand was cut off, and his hammer was crudely attached to it. Yeah, so that's just really dark. And, it explains why he has a bunch of spikes in him and why his hand is a hammer. Like, lynching in a flipping ghost movie? That's a little, like, beyond this movie's ability to cover in a, respectful way, I think. It's just awful. Like, it just, like, takes this ghost who in the movie is just, your average ghost, and he's spooky, and it says, oh, he was flipping, like, lynched. This movie just goes places you would not think that it would go, but it has no taste, so it just goes there. So yeah, sorry about the camera change, but the battery died. Anyway, yeah, all the ghosts suck. So we got the Hammer, the Jacqueline, the Juggernaut, just really stupid names. Like just the Fiery Skeleton and the Disembodied Hand. All these names sound like, you know, biblical type names or something. But some of them are just really specific, like the Pilgrimess. You also have the Great Child and the Dire Mother. And these are ghosts that are so flipping specific that, like, nobody would be able to find these ghosts. The Great Child is Harold Shelburne, who's a mentally disabled man who never outgrew diapers and had to be spoon-fed even as a fully grown adult. He often made baby sounds. The Dire Mother is Margaret Shelburne, a shy little lady standing 3 feet tall. At the freak show where she lived, she was raped by the Tall Man, another circus freak, and gave birth to her illegitimate son Harold. What the shit am I reading? Is this actually what these ghosts, like the actual origin story of these flipping ghosts? Oh yeah, she was sexually assaulted by the Tall Man. I guess it's Slender Man or something. It was before Slender Man. Anyway, my point obviously is that these new ghosts just freaking suck. Like, nobody asked for this weird hodgepodge of ideas like the Torn Prince. Royce Clayton was a gifted and famous teenage baseball player in the 1940s and 50s who caught the eye of colleges around the USA. Thanks to his challenger, a greaser who set him up, Royce died in an accident caused by cut brake lines. His remains are still buried at the baseball diamond, and his ghost carries his baseball bat. If his remains are at the baseball diamond, how's his ghost in this mansion? Aren't ghosts supposed to be near where they're buried or near where they died? This does not make any sense on a fundamental level. You know, I guess you can trap ghosts and put them in jail. Just nonsense. Anyway, yeah, the new ghosts all suck. Now, one ghost that I'd like to mention here is the Angry Princess. Dana Newman was a beautiful but abused lady who lived in the later 1900s. She had plastic surgeries to alter her perceived flaws, and after a botched experiment that mutilated her eyes, she brutally killed herself in a bathtub at the clinic. Her ghost often carries blood, is naked, and carries the same knife she used to commit suicide. This movie is very tasteless. It really trivializes serious subject matter like suicide and sexual assault and flipping lynchings. But this Angry Princess ghost is indeed nude, but she's topless in like every scene. But there's a censored version of the movie where she's also topless, except they just blur out her nipples, which does not look right. Like, why just blur out the nipples? Just take a separate shot where she's wearing a dress or something, because just because she's a ghost doesn't mean she wouldn't have flipping nipples. That's not how breasts work. Or just have her wear a dress. Why she gotta be walking around naked all the time? Does this mean she was buried naked? Or, I guess she committed suicide in a bathtub, so she was naked in the... It's just stupid. Like, why's there gotta be a topless ghost? Like, Tony Shalhoub's ghost wife, who's one of the ghosts, isn't isn't topless. Why is this angry princess ghost topless? Like, there's nothing wrong with this, again, but the censored version makes no sense, because just why have her wearing a dress? Why blur out the nipples? It makes no sense. Anyway, so yeah, just thought I should mention that. All these ghosts are just so weirdly specific, and nobody would be able to find all of them, because, like, who's gonna find a flipping giant mentally disabled baby man and his freaking 3-foot-tall mother? How do you find these weirdly specific ghosts? Like, and presumably the names of these ghosts come from an old satanic text or something. How's a baseball player a torn prince? He's not a prince. He's just some baseball guy. Stupid. And how's the angry princess a princess? She's just a lady who does plastic surgery. And also, these ghosts, the makeup is so bad. It's so awful. It looks like something from the flipping David S. Pumpkins sketch. It actually looks like that, like something you'd see on 100 Floors of Frights. It's insane how much this movie actually thinks you're going to be scared by, like, this white rouge and this lame flippin' cage and the nails and, like, God, the makeup is bad. It is, just nauseating to look at. The makeup is so horrible. Just thought I should mention that. Point number 5, the house makes no sense. As I mentioned in point 1, the house in this movie is a kind of steampunk pastiche slash, I guess you could call it a Y2K splatter mess. It looks really cheap. I mean, it doesn't look good. The walls are all clearly just like bargain bin plexiglass with no thought or anything put into it. Like, the walls all have demonic spells written on them to keep the ghosts out. And this could be cool if they were, like, in blood or something, or, you know, like, scary, but they're just like... These demonic incantations look like something you'd find at flipping IKEA. It looks so sterile and toned down, and it's not a scary house. But the house makes no sense, and here's why. In the end, when everyone is gathered around this circle of spinning rings, something happens, I forget what, but it breaks all the glass in the house, even though earlier Tony Shalhoub tried shattering the front door of the house with a chair, and it didn't work because it's plexiglass or, you know, tempered glass or whatever have you. So I'm not sure how a chair wouldn't work, but whatever happens at the end, it's like a scream, or I think the machine goes into overdrive, the machine in the basement. You know, in any story, you've got to keep the characters in the crucible, as screenwriters call it. You've got to keep them in the conflict, and, you know, if the viewer has to ask, why don't they just leave this situation, then you've made yourself a problem. Now, this isn't a problem in the original 13 Ghosts, because, you know, you can have a story where people are exploring a haunted house and it's spooky, but they don't all just run out, because then the movie'd be over, and that's okay. You're not going to be like, man, these characters are stupid. You're not going to, like, shout at the Blair Witch people when they go into the forest, like, dummies, you shouldn't go in that forest, it's haunted, you know, because they're adventurous people, and they want to have an interesting time looking for the spooky Blair Witch. The problem in 13 Ghosts is that it tries to keep its characters in the crucible too much. The front door just locks, like, for no reason. There's no reason why this happens. And Tony Shalhoub tries to break it. But then later, they lift one of these walls just off its rails and carry it around as like a shield against the ghosts. And it's like, if they can do that for one of the walls, why can't they just do that for the front door? Just lift it off and, like, you know, walk out. It'd be so easy. Also, this house is like the least secure thing imaginable, because, I mean, like, it's full of all this arcane shit and these fancy, like, artifacts. And all that's there is, like, plexiglass. You know that there's modern tools that can cut through plexiglass, right? You're pretty much asking to be robbed at this point, with your entire house being like a showcase for all this valuable, centuries-old shit. It's just absurd. Anyway, yeah, the house makes no sense, because at one point they just lift one of these walls off its hinges. Also, when Tony Shalhoub hits the door with the chair, you can tell that it's going to give way, because the house is so poorly constructed. It's such a cheap set. Anyway, yeah, the house makes no sense. It's over-reliant on cogwheels and, you know, oh shit, it's a Rube Goldberg machine of suspense instead of just, hey, it's a spooky mansion, which is all you need for a good horror movie, am I right? Alright, point number 6. This kind of goes along with the house making no sense. There's a lot of CGI abominations. And when I reviewed Gothica, I mentioned that the effects were actually pretty okay, especially the shower scene. It's actually kind of freaky. And I don't know if that's CGI or not, but the CGI in this movie is so bad. Like, there's some exterior shots of the house where you can tell it is CGI. I don't even know if they made the entire house practically or not. Maybe they just, like, made a couple rooms and left it at that, because obviously this house cannot function practically, because it runs on technology that does not exist, that would not work. And so they have to, like, CGI it whenever the doors are moving around or anything. Also, the machine in the basement, like the big satanic machine, it just looks so fake. All these cogwheels, and the same goes for the ring of razors at the end. It looks so fake. It looks like something out of a flipping Animusic video, like flipping Pipe Dream. You know, and maybe back in the early 2000s, audiences who weren't exposed to CGI would be like, man, this is incredible, but it looks so fake today. It looks so fake. And to think that they could have just had it be a spooky mansion without all this gimmick shit is just really sad, because it looked better practically. Practical effects always look better than CGI. And I will say, recent CGI has made advancements. But we're not talking recent CGI, we're talking flipping 2001 CGI, and this machine in the basement looks so horrible. It looks like something someone put together in 10 minutes in Blender. It is one of the worst looking sets I've ever seen. And it's like flipping Amnesia, a machine for pigs. That's basically what it looks like. I'm not a gamer, alright, but I know the plot of Amnesia, a machine for pigs, and that's how this movie feels. Really lame, just a steampunk atrocity, all these fucking cogwheels, and it's too concerned with aesthetic, that's my point. Too concerned with aesthetic. In fact, I'd argue flipping Amnesia Machine for Pigs has a better storyline than this Dark Castle Entertainment bargain bin gutter rubbish. Now we got number 7, Kalina Cyrus's Lover. This is something I really take issue with, because it makes no sense. Kalina is the character who's established very early on in the movie as someone who is against the capture and, the capture and holding of ghosts, essentially. She's like the ASPCA, but for ghosts. And this is actually, I will give the movie this is an interesting position to take, because you have to wonder, it is kind of slavery to, hold these ghosts captive. But the twist, which makes no sense, is that Kalina is faking this whole thing, even though the first time we see her, she's at one of Cyrus's ghost trap adventures, and she's talking about how horrible he is, and she has no reason to put one over on anyone, because Tony Shalhoub hasn't come into the picture yet. She has no reason to deceive anyone. So it just makes no sense, because in that she's like in the intro, before Tony Shalhoub's introduced, she's like, oh God, what you're doing is so horrible. And then when Tony Shalhoub meets her, she's like, oh God, what your uncle did was so horrible. And then in the last 15 minutes, out of nowhere, she just turns out to be having worked for Cyrus all along, even though she tried to help Tony Shalhoub and his family survive, which directly runs against the goals of, Cyrus, who wants Tony Shalhoub to become the 13th ghost. Just makes no sense. That is a twist villain that comes out of nowhere, and I don't accept it, because it completely retcons everything that Colleen is in the first half of the movie, and says, oh, she was a bad guy the whole time. Except she can't be, because in the intro, like I said, Tony Shalhoub isn't there. So there's no reason why she'd say, I'm against what you're doing, and trapping ghosts is wrong, because, it's just stupid. It's this really stupid twist that this movie did not need. And it definitely works against this movie. Okay, number 8. This is a pretty big point. Trying to separate itself from Ghostbusters, obviously, because the original 13 Ghosts was nothing like Ghostbusters. It was its own original concept and story, which was fun and interesting, but this movie is about trapping ghosts in little boxes. Sound familiar? Yes, it's just Ghostbusters. This movie has to separate itself from Ghostbusters or be accused of being a ripoff. Cyrus, the uncle in this scenario, is basically just a Ghostbuster. He just traps ghosts and keeps them in little boxes. That's what the Ghostbusters do, am I right? So this movie feels the need to introduce gadgets that could not be confused with the gadgets the Ghostbusters use. Also, Cyrus uses these ghosts for nefarious purposes, unlike the Ghostbusters, who capture ghosts for, to keep people safe, because ghosts are scary and, they terrorize people. In this version, the ghosts are tormented souls who don't really want to be here participating in this stuff, but they're forced to by Cyrus, even though they don't have to. Like, if this Hammer guy, this flipping George Markley guy, is actually as happy and honest as the description claims, why's he gotta participate in this stuff? And why is he so angry all the time? And if Tony Shalhoub and anyone else can see him with these magic ghost goggles, why can't he just talk it out, Because, Tony Shalhoub's ghost wife, who's one of the ghosts, seems pretty civil and decent and doesn't try to kill anyone. So what's up with these ghosts that would have no reason to? Like the flippin' torn prince. He's just a baseball player. What's his motive to kill Tony Shalhoub? Why didn't he just talk to him? It's stupid. Not all these ghosts would want to kill Tony Shalhoub. I get why the Jackal would. He's a serial killer. But why does the angry princess want to kill anyone? She's just a lady who got too much plastic surgery. There's no reason to become angry and scary, it's just stupid. Also, I just realized this, but the angry princess, her description says that she killed herself in a bathtub at the clinic, i.e. the plastic surgery clinic, except there's a scene where Tony Shalhoub's daughter goes into the bathroom and is like, man, this is a cool bathroom, and the angry princess is in the bathroom like, this was my bathroom when I was alive. I used to take a bath in here. Except that's impossible, because it's Cyrus's mansion, it's not her house. How does she have memories of this house? It's not where she lived. She has no personal connection to it. It's just so stupid. This movie makes no flipping sense, like I said, but again, it tries to separate itself from Ghostbusters as much as possible. At the beginning, we get a glimpse of the flipping ghost machine, which has like this Grim Fandango-looking skeleton bobblehead on it for whatever reason. I don't know what that's all about. Just some really bizarre mechanisms and stuff in this. And of course the aesthetic is supposed to be the furthest thing away from Ghostbusters, because it's just ugly, unlike the aesthetic of Ghostbusters, which is fun and cool. This aesthetic just looks like shit. So yeah, in trying to distance itself from Ghostbusters, which it easily could be accused of ripping off, it ends up being not as fun as Ghostbusters, and not as fun as the original 13 Ghosts, and not as fun as anything. Number 9. Exposition Dump. This is one of the things mentioned on the Wikipedia article. I have to agree. This is one of the most exposition-heavy movies I've ever seen. Everything is tell and don't show, and the main plot revolves around the opening of this satanic portal that's going to suck everyone into the underworld or some shit. You have 5 straight minutes of the humanitarian lady rattling off the facts in this arcane text. It looks so fake. It looks worse than the fake book in The Nun. Like, the Conjuring universe looks really shitty, but when your fake satanic text looks worse than the flippin' Valak manuscript or whatever it's called, it's just inexcusable. Not only is the exposition dump poorly executed and it doesn't fit in, it's just unnecessary. Nobody needs to know about this satanic portal. You could leave some things up to the viewer's imagination. That might make what's going on a little spookier, because, you know, not everything would be explained in this straightforward terms that kind of negates the purpose of horror, which is to keep us in the dark about stuff, you know. It'd be like if in the Blair Witch Project it was explained exactly how she works and how she operates and how to contact her. Ruins horror. But this movie is so contrived, and obviously the ghosts are so flipping complicated that it has to come up with some reason why there's a flippin' topless lady and flippin' giant baby man and guy with a bunch of nails in. You know, it's got to explain what all these ghosts are doing in the same flippin' house for this random ritual of like 12 ghosts, and someone has to be the 13th ghost, I guess. Makes no sense. Just tons of exposition, way too much exposition. So much exposition that they couldn't even fit the backstories of these poor souls into the movie itself, and had to include it as a DVD extra, which is now a section on the Wikipedia page. That's just genuinely depressing, and yeah, the exposition dump really, really sucks. Point number 10, Cyrus isn't dead. This point is much like how Kalina turns out to be a bad guy. Cyrus being alive at the end makes no sense, because in the intro we see him dead, like with massive blood loss and hemorrhaging. So his being alive makes no sense. Also, his being the villain and wanting to kill his nephew and his nephew's 2 kids, like, I get that he thinks Tony Shalhoub is a bumbling idiot. I think the same thing. What did the kids do wrong? They're just youngsters. I mean, what? He's just so cartoonishly evil. He's like a flipping Looney Tunes villain. And in the original, there's also a conflict, which is that the lawyer in the original 13 Ghosts, if I remember this correctly, is looking for the eccentric uncle's old fortune. And in the original, the uncle is one of the ghosts instead of a dead wife or something. The uncle's one of the ghosts. But the lawyer is actually the villain, and he's like looking for the treasure, and he's trying to find it. And just a much better villain, because I mean, lawyers make excellent villains, but the uncle being the villain just is stupid. Like, I get that in the opening scene he's presented as like, a really shitty guy, and nobody really likes him, and he abuses his employees. But like, you tone it down a little, and also he dies in the first scene. So it makes no sense that he's alive, even if he's like a mastermind, and he orchestrated all this stuff, like, so that Tony Shalhoub would walk into it. Why does he pretend to be dead in the opening scene? For nobody? Because nobody's there, nobody's looking at him. Certainly not Tony Shalhoub, or anyone who could tell Tony Shalhoub. So much like how Kalina in the opening scene is like, yeah, ghost catching is bad, and that turns out to be on Cyrus's side later on. This makes no sense. You can't just, like, if the intro wasn't in the movie, then it'd be fine. But the intro sets up these established facts, like that Cyrus is dead, so his being alive is just, it just doesn't make any sense. I mean, him walking out is pretty cool. He's way, the guy who plays him is a better actor than Tony Shalhoub, and you're like, thank gosh, someone other than Tony Shalhoub. But it just doesn't make any sense. It's a really stupid twist, and why Cyrus gotta be alive, It's just stupid. Number 11, the psychic element makes no sense. In this movie, we in addition to the lawyer and the uncle and the humanitarian lady, we also have the psychic portrayed by Matthew Lillard, who you probably know as he plays Shaggy in Scooby-Doo and Scooby-Doo 2: Monsters Unleashed. And there's also a third Scooby-Doo movie, isn't there? Curse of the Lake Monster. Matthew Lillard is just the worst Shaggy. R.I.P. Casey Kasem. Much better Shaggy. He voices Shaggy in the cartoons now. In this, he plays this nerdy psychic who's just basically like Rick Moranis from Ghostbusters. But here's why having a psychic in this movie makes no sense, right? Cyrus needs this psychic because the psychic can sense out the ghosts, and he can use them like a little ghost bloodhound. Except he has goggles with which you can actually just like see the ghosts. And not only that, but you can also see blood on the walls and all this, wacky shit. Why is a psychic necessary in this case? Like, if this was a grounded horror movie, where the ghosts are slowly built up to and their existence is only hinted at, like the remake of The Haunting, then I think Owen Wilson's a psychic in that, maybe, or someone's a psychic. But in a grounded horror movie, the psychic serves as a communicator with the spirit world. But this isn't a grounded horror movie. This is cheesy schlock, and everyone can see the ghosts. And the only thing Matthew Lillard does is like cower and cringe, and he's like, oh no, there's too much psychic energy. So it's like, if it's too much psychic energy for you, what are you doing here, Why not just, let the eccentric uncle find his own goddamn ghosts with his flipping magic ghost goggles? Like, you don't need to be psychic if you can just see ghosts. So yeah, the psychic element just makes no sense, and, it's just really stupid, and there's no reason for there to be a psychic in this movie. It adds nothing. Okay. Alright, point number 12. The art design is ugly. This is kind of like with CGI Abomination, except I'm talking just the general feel and tone of the movie. It's rooted in the early 2000s. The poster is complete garbage. It's just a screaming face composed of the faces of the ghosts and Tony Shalhoub and some of the other characters. And it just screams edginess. Like, this is the kind of horror movie you'd watch if you were flipping, you wear a flipping MTV shirt back in the day and you go to Hot Topic. I know I say everything is emo. Everything is emo. At least the stuff I don't like, alright? Deal with it. But the art design is really bad. All the fonts they use are just not good. The stylization of the title, turning it from just 13 Ghosts into TH13EEN Ghosts or whatever, like it's 7 or something, like it's flipping Morgan Freeman. It's not a good enough horror movie to stylize the title like that with numbers. It's so stupid. But yeah, the art design is really bad. But, big surprise for someone who directed entirely commercials and 2 movies and then retired. It looks like a commercial. It looks like a Skittles ad. It's shot like a commercial. There's no sense of shot composition or choreography or so-and-so walks into a room, they do so-and-so, they leave, we show them on camera, no close-up, no over the shoulder, the camera's always static, it never moves around. The shots, even the shots with the ghosts, with the wild supernatural stuff going on, never interesting, because it's just like fast motion, so-and-so. And some people, one critique of this movie that's on the Wikipedia article is that it couldn't do seizures, which it could, but, that's not a fault I find with the movie. I just think it's really ugly. It's a really ugly movie. It doesn't feel right. It feels like you're watching a pile of sludge. Like, it's so bad. It's just so unappealing. Point number 13. Last point. This is that there are more than 13 ghosts, which negates the entire point of the entire movie. You might not think this is such a big deal, but 13 Ghosts, the original, is cool because there's 13 ghosts. But if you count up the ghosts that are in the movie, you realize, oh dang, there's only 12, so someone is gonna die and become the 13th ghost, or maybe the 13th ghost has yet to make its presence known. That's pretty cool. In the original, the lawyer dies because he's corrupt, and he's just searching for this treasure, and in his quest for the hidden treasure of the eccentric uncle, he dies and becomes the 13th ghost. Pretty simple stuff. In this movie, there's also the corrupt lawyer. They stuff him in here, but he has nothing to do, and he dies in like the first 15 minutes, in the first 25 minutes, but he really does not get enough screen time. And then the real villain, of course, is just the eccentric uncle and the humanitarian lady, and the psychic is just he's not a villain. He's on Tony Shalhoub's side. There's too many people to keep track of. Too much shit going on. Too much simultaneous 3-ring circus stuff going on, because we also have Tony Shalhoub's nanny, who he hires to take care of his children, and I don't think I've mentioned her up to this point because she's just a really like one-note character who's just like, you're a bunch of crazy white people, and man, I sure wish I didn't work for this white family. It's just so weird. Like, the point is that Tony Shalhoub's poor because his wife died and they're in debt. how does he afford this 24/7 babysitter? Like, you see all these bills in the opening scene to be like, yeah, Tony Shalhoub's in such debt. How does he pay this babysitter? It doesn't make any sense. Anyway, too many characters to keep track of, and more than one of them dies, which ruins, it really just like ruins the point of there being 13 ghosts, because Tony Shalhoub's dead wife is one of the 12 ghosts, the initial 12, so that's fine. But then the lawyer dies, he gets cut in half. So where's his ghost? Because in this universe it's established that if you die, you have a ghost, so he'd have a ghost, that's already 13. Cyrus wants Tony Shalhoub to die, except, obviously he doesn't, because he's the protagonist, and we gotta have a happy ending, no sacrifice or anything. So the uncle dies, so that's 14 ghosts. We're up to 14 ghosts now. Kalina, the humanitarian lady, dies. That's 15 ghosts. And the psychic guy dies, Matthew Lillard. So that's 15 flipping ghosts. You got 4 more ghosts than the initial 12. You have the lawyer, the uncle, the humanitarian lady, and the psychic. That's more than 13 ghosts. Which one is the 13th ghost? Maybe they're all the 13th ghost. Or maybe this movie should have called itself 15 Ghosts. It's what a lot of sequels do. Like, 7 was going to have a sequel called 8, where Morgan Freeman is revealed to have clairvoyant abilities. It was never released, obviously, because 7 is a good movie on its own. It doesn't need a sequel. But, like, you could have called the movie 15 Ghosts and set it in the same universe as the original and have it be a sequel instead of a remake. And it makes sense, because there's 15 ghosts. There's not 13. There's the initial 12, and then 13, 14, 15, 16 ghosts. I was wrong. 16 ghosts. The math is just so hard to figure out, but yeah, 4 people die. So that's 16 ghosts, not 13, not 15 even. 16 ghosts. That's a lot of ghosts. But yeah, that's my final point against 13 ghosts. Is that there's not 13 ghosts, there's 16 ghosts. Unless the people who die in the movie don't have ghosts, which doesn't make any sense, because in this universe, everyone becomes a ghost when they die, like Tony Shalhoub's ghost wife. She died, now she's a ghost. Why doesn't this apply to the lawyer? Where's his ghost? Like, the psychic dies, and then Tony Shalhoub sees his ghost, so I guess he's the 13th ghost, or someone's the 16th ghost. What a load of shit. Anyway, that's 13 reasons why 13 Ghosts is an absolute dumpster fire, and you should watch the original 13 Ghosts instead. It's in black and white, sure, and you can't watch it in the version with the ghost goggles, unfortunately. That's just a real shame. They should release it on, they should release a version where you can use the ghost goggles and include the ghost goggles. It wouldn't cost that much more, and it'd be so awesome. I would buy a VHS of 13 Ghosts, the original, with ghost goggles included and with the cool invisible ghost effect, but maybe you can only do it with film. I don't know. Whatever William Castle did was pretty awesome and definitely a feat of techno-wizardry for the 1950s. And, even if you can't watch the original 13 Ghosts with the ghost goggles, it's a fun movie and you'll enjoy it. You'll get a kick out of it. It's a classic. And it's not a horror movie that says anything really by any means. It's not Hereditary. It's not Rosemary's Baby. It's not the Stepford Wives. It's not a cerebral horror film, but it is a fun horror film. And I think it's important to appreciate fun horror movies because they're increasingly rare these days. Horror that doesn't take itself too seriously, a little on the lighter side, but you know, still with a lot of fun ideas and concepts and zany things that go somewhere. And I think it's a shame that Dark Castle Entertainment took the name of William Castle, you know, just a nice, respectable horror filmmaker, and just made a ton of shit that had nothing to do with his name, nothing to do with his legacy, and trying to revitalize all these properties that everyone had forgotten about and shouldn't have been remade. Like, just completely unnecessary stuff. Anyway, yeah, that's 13 reasons why you shouldn't watch the new 13 Ghosts. And you know what you should do? Buy some Nicholas flippin' comics. That's right to Nicholas, 1424 Columbine Street, number 1 Denver, Colorado 80206. They're the top comics, supersonic Nicholas comics, right to your front door through the power of the USPS. Check them out, tinyurl.com/Nicholas Comics if you want the latest updates on Nicholas Comics, and that'll do it for me. Oh yeah, one other thing. Why is there a box of cornflakes back here? No reason. Sayonara, suckers.